So in this episode, we'll get to review exactly what jobs are there in the agricultural space and why it's a large or huge employer, especially for the young people that are on the continent that are largely unemployed. There's a lot of push right now, especially on the African continent, when it comes to climate-smart agriculture. And that basically means the knowledge or the practices that are more modern or more favorable to the management, especially of the soil and the crop. And so how then would you, as a young person who is in Africa and thinking, I'm not interested in agriculture, or I am interested in agriculture, but where exactly do I start from? And so before we get into the kind of jobs that you would be able to engage in if you're a young person that's interested in agriculture, there are a couple of facts that we do need to know, especially facts that affect the continent. The first one, like I said, is that we are home to the largest arable land, which means we have huge capacity when it comes to production of food. The second one is that we are significantly affected by climate change in this context, meaning that there's a lot of post-harvest losses or just loss of crops for the most part because of the floods and the rains that are not consistent because of the changing weather patterns due to climate change. There are many ways in which young people can get into the agricultural space. And when it comes to the climate-smart agriculture, there are many new ways that are coming up. Even the mechanization or the kind of insurance, for example, there are insurance products that are now being created to enable farmers to be able to produce a lot more of the crops without necessarily thinking about the cost of the inputs. Inputs is another area, for example, and not just inputs that are artificial, but inputs that are organic, especially when it comes to the farm in terms of animal husbandry as well as the crops themselves. There's a lot of inputs that are required. Fertilizer. One of the things that I mentioned when we were speaking about the energy section in terms of new jobs that are coming up is the green hydrogen. And green hydrogen is a good source of ammonia, or can be used to produce ammonia, which is a critical component of fertilizer. And so anyone who, again, would be interested in the fertilizer space, that's a huge opportunity right there when it comes to organic fertilizer. There are many other opportunities or areas in the climate smart agriculture space. There are crops that are climate resilient. For example, cassava, sweet potatoes. There's moringa tree, which is an amazing plant that apparently absorbs quite a bit of carbon in and of itself. And then it has so many byproducts as well. These are just examples of areas that any young person can get into if they're interested in the climate smart agricultural space. There are many ways in which you can play a role. And remember that agriculture is not going anywhere, because for as long as man is on the earth, they will have to feed, or we will have to feed. And so it's a huge opportunity. And one of my personal recent discoveries, especially in the last 2 years, was that for example, in Kenya, over 70% of the young people actually reside in the rural areas. And so when it comes to creation of employment or addressing the issue of unemployment, most of these rural areas are largely agrarian. For Kenya, for example, 30% of our GDP is banked on agriculture. We cannot run away from agriculture being a source of employment. So whether you're in the policy space, in the research space, I know there are many organizations that are focused on agriculture in particular, but we do have to find ways in which we can engage more young people in the climate smart agriculture space, especially women, because they're already in that space. But even as we create interventions, they have to be gender sensitive, but they also have to be youth-centric, because if 70% of the young people on this continent reside in rural areas, then that's the way that we need to go when it comes to enticing them to get into the agricultural space by marketing it accurately to them on the one part, but also being able to address issues like land rights, issues like cultural practices that inhibit especially women from owning land or being able to practice, certain kinds of agriculture. There are many ways in which we could address the issue of climate smart agriculture in order for us to be able to address the issue of unemployment.